The project for today is a pair of tables that are meant to hold my turntables on top and my mixing board on the bottom. This is the first time I'm building furniture that is using square stock and plywood. The ability to make this kind of furniture was the first thing that actually interested me in starting to learn how to weld. The nice thing about using this type of process is that the metal frame will give you a fair amount of structure without a lot of extra bulk. So to get the process rolling, I started off by cutting all of this square stock. I think I'm using half-inch square stock here. It would be more ideal to have a welding fixture table so that I could secure all of these pieces and make sure that they're not flexing as I'm adding all of this heat into them. In this case, I'm working with what I have, which is this 4x8 plywood covered work surface. So it's not ideal, and sometimes some of the splatter from the welding will end up burning little marks into the table. So that's something I need to keep an eye on so that I don't accidentally start any fires. So what I'm doing here, first I did the countertop surface, the top surface of the table, and got that all welded into shape. And then I'm starting to add the legs to the top table, cutting everything as I go, using these magnets to sort of keep things in order. Part of the challenge of not using a fixture table is that you're not securing everything to the table and making sure that it's square and such. So I really have to keep an eye on all of the different angles that I'm working with here and making sure that everything is 90-degree angles and doesn't move or flex or warp as I weld things together. Overall, this process works pretty good. It's a little odd working with these big sizes and such, but it's a good first project to really kind of get my head around how to do this kind of joinery and how to make sure that everything is staying together and is structurally sound. My basic process is to sort of tack things in place and make sure that I have all of things sort of structurally put together, and then to go back and grind all of the joints and see kind of what things look like, see if there's any cracks or that sort of thing. So it's a lot of repetition in terms of welding a joint and kind of grinding away to see sort of how the weld worked and that sort of thing. I don't have any formal training in welding, so most of what I have learned is just watching other people on the internet and just kind of trying things out and seeing what it takes to sort of figure things out. The way that I cut all of this bar stock is that the corners are all 45-degree angles, so I have to be careful when I'm actually welding that outside edge. It's easy to sort of burn away or to melt too much when you're adding that kind of heat to the areas of the metal that's thinner than the rest of it. So once I get the basic structure of the table together, then it's time to start thinking about where all of the different braces are to add structural support and rigidity. Given that this is meant to have another table that rolls out from under it freely, there are some big spans and such, and so I need to make sure to add a lot of 45-degree angles to kind of tighten everything up. So here's some images of the welds after I ground them down a little bit. So, you know, not perfect. This is some of the first few welds I've ever done. Here's what the table is looking like once I put some primer on it. And of course, it really helps out to put a coat of paint on it. You can see how much it looks better. And here's what the table looked like once it was all finally put together. At this point, it had been painted, but the top hadn't been finished. I finished it with some leather dye, followed by a couple coats of polyurethane just to protect the surface. And here you can see the table in its final form. So on top I have my turntables, and they're at a nice height where I can stand in front of the table. And then underneath is this Mackie mixing desk. The bottom table is on wheels, so it's able to just roll out from underneath the top table. I don't yet have the Mackie mixing board hooked up to anything, but that's going to be one of the goals for the future. The other thing I'm thinking about for this table is possibly putting some sort of a cover or something to kind of hide all of the wires and such that are hanging around underneath the table. But this is basically what I was aiming for. I'm pretty pleased with the way this turned out as sort of a first design and build project for something like this, using a metal structure and plywood for the surfaces. I really like how you can create a lot of strength and support without having too much bulk. Like if I had tried to build this out of wood, it would have been a substantially bulkier desk. So this works pretty good for my purposes. Little wobbly if left or right, but other than that, plenty strong and does the trick.